Harihi Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. ओम शिष्य आत्मसमर्पण कार्पण्य दोषो उपहत स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्म सम्मूढचेताः यश्रेयस्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम् ओम. We are in the 59th Shloka of Bhagavad Gītā, chapter 2. The Shloka goes like this. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasya param dṛṣṭvā nivartate. Vishayaha vinivartante. Vinivartante is refraining or desisting. Vishayaha, the objects of interest. Light for the eyes, the sound for the ears, etc. Niraharasya, by not feeding the needs to the indriyas. Okay, so by, say for example, I take the TV and put it away, I cannot see TV. So by depriving the ability to see, I can let go of something, dehinah. But those who are in the path of the Sthitapragya, rasavarjam, rasaha api asya, rasopyasya, rasavarjam, including the taste is the context. Rasaha api asya, together with the objects. Right, so it is not just letting go of the TV, but also the interest towards the TV. That is what is the context here. Rasavarjam, rasaha api asya. How is it is done? Param dṛṣṭvā nivartate. Because they see something superior in value. By looking at something superior in value, they overcome the binding that we have towards one object. The example that I have given many times in the class also is, I used to have a small gilli danda, which is the stick game that we play in India. And that was my very favorite thing. And it was taken away during the time of exam by my mother. And it was put on the top loft area. And my attention was always towards that. As soon as the exam was over, the first thing that I did, came running home to pick it up again. I was that interested. And after a few years, when I started playing something like hockey or other games, my interest on that gilli danda was totally lost. Even if in case it was kept right in front of me, I won't even touch it. I was able to let go of the object during that exams forcibly, but my mind was always attracted towards that. It was not rasavarjam. The taste for that object was not overcome. Whereas as I matured into something more superior, for example, that interest faded away from the top. And if you apply it to our life, it is the same thing. When you realize the value of God, then your need or your desire-driven approach to objects falls down. It comes down. So, dehinaha vinivartante. They desist by refraining themselves from the viṣayāḥ. But once you see the param, that is the 10th value of the 16 that we have counted for Sthitaprajña, right? That one, because of seeing that supreme, having realized the Paramatma, nivartate rasavarjam. He lets go of that attachment towards that object. Api rasaha, together with the ras, together with the enjoyment aspect or experience aspect of that object. That is the direct meaning of this shloka. Direct meaning is anyone having a body can refrain from viṣayāḥ by not feeding them. Nir aharaha. But by voluntarily avoiding the contact of the indriyas to that specific object, one can let go of the viṣayāḥ. However, Sthitapragya is not only letting go of the object, but also lets go of the experience that that object delivers. So how is that achieved? By experiencing the Supreme through maturity, the non-submission to the object of experience. This thing will happen when we mature in our path. There are a few viewpoints. First thing is, in the second chapter, we have been talking of Atmagyan. Then we have had that, vikalpa as to whether you are getting sad because of this, this, or this. So Atma, Anatma, and Dharma. These three were the context. Then Karma Yoga was introduced. Then the concept of one who has got that matured mind, Sthitapragya, was introduced. And now he is defining the Sthitapragya. Here, because when we say paraṁ dṛṣṭvā, by attaching the param to the Bhagavan, we are introducing bhakti. It is not the object that binds us. It is the experience. Mumukshuhu, that is Sthitaprajña prapti upayam, is done through this devotion. The second chapter is considered to be a Purna Adhyaya, similar to the 18th chapter, which means the entire context of Bhagavad Gita is discussed in this second chapter as well as the 18th chapter. In this chain, bhakti is introduced in this shloka, and that is the way that we tie the entirety of this chapter to the completeness of Bhagavad Gita. Now, one could misunderstand the definitions given so far to conclude the sensory withdrawal is liberation. I have come across this being a conclusion that people come into or make. Be careful. Withdrawal alone does not free you. You may give up the object, but not the longing. And it is the longing for something which is samsara. It is not being free from some object is samsara nivritti. It is getting yourself free from the longing towards objects is what the true freedom is. Paraṁ dṛṣṭvā addresses that it is not by suppressing the object of interest in the lower order, but through seeing the higher and devaluing the lower, eventually holding no value at all. That is our growth. That should be our growth path. Now let us take the case of mumukshu, which is when we connect it to the nididhyasanam. Even after the knowledge arises, the old rasa may linger. In fact, in the next shloka, Bhagavan will further clarify. Yatataha api, he will say, even for a jnani, this aspect of the sensory objects attracting them towards their object of interest is unavoidable. Now, nididhyasana allows the spin to slow and stop naturally. Now, there are additional insights. There are several spiritual paths, and let us divide it into two. Path of suppression. They try to suppress it. The periodic collapse and guilt is inevitable in this path. And that makes the journey longer. I'm not saying the journey will not conclude, that it will not be leading you to eventual liberation from those bondage, but it may take longer because you are fighting from within yourself. And when you are fighting, it is but natural that you will lose sometimes and win sometimes. And whenever you lose, you will have that guilt of, man, I have not been able to. On the other hand, when you go towards the path of vision, I have discovered something much, much more powerful, much, much more valuable. And that value, when I'm going to embrace that value, when I'm going to adopt that value, the ones for the lower order will naturally go. It is called as effortless release. Paraṁ dṛṣṭvā, after seeing, is the word that Bhagavan has used, not param labdva, not after attaining the Supreme, which is what the term attainment here is realization. Bhagavan has used after seeing, not after attaining the Supreme. Liberation is not acquisition, it is cognition. That is the main message that we get here. The self was never absent, ignorant was. And when that ignorance was removed, the self is revealed automatically. Alternate is, if taste remains, do not panic. It simply means the higher has not yet become fully clear. If you feel in the path, if you find that there are times when it feels like the path of suppression and the guilt is coming up, when you periodically collapse, we need to understand that when we are in the path of vision, paraṁ dṛṣṭvā, then we know that it is not the full thing that we have seen yet. We have not looked at it from the value perspective yet. Right? Vishnu Sahasranama, all the 1,000 names, when you go through that, that value gets more and more and more revealed to you. So if you do slip, do not panic. It means that that fullness of that higher, the supreme, has not yet been seen by you. Here, I will deviate a little bit. This is my personal observation. Right? It is not traditional. So if it is a little out of place, please enjoy it and don't complain. My personal observation. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah. You can see that it is not constructed as a common English sentence. It is kind of jumbled. What is it? Vishaya vinivartante. Instead of saying Dehino vinivartante niraharasya vishayah api asyo param dṛṣṭvā nivartate vishayo rasah. As you can see, the chandas is also exactly forming. And this will make absolute sense. If in case you look at the translation, it will make it much, much more clearer in terms of how it is expressed in English. So my question is, why is it that Bhagavan has chosen these words? Or Vedavyasa has jumbled the words of whatever Bhagavan had spoken into this shloka? I feel it is because the idea is to emphasize the importance of this message in the shloka. When it is put like that, you will understand why and how this gets bound to each other. And will do some more analysis on this. Now, because it is poetry, chandas is important. However, to tie a construct of a shloka to the core meaning that is conveyed is the objectives. Sometimes we jumble the words to derive the meaning. Now, how to consider jumbled presentations to values? Now, we can take this shloka as an example. There are several such shlokas where we can discuss about that as to why it has been put in this order. We have done that earlier too. First, he references the future and then he comes to the past in terms of experiences. We have seen that in the past, and this is a shloka where the entire shloka in itself is in a jumbled form. In Sanskrit, word order is not primarily for grammar. It is for revelation. It is for emphasis. It is for generating a cognitive impact. You can put it in the order of importance of the concept when you are putting it. And because the Sanskrit language has been created in such a way, right? So because it has been done that in such a manner, pedagogical manner is the way that we call it, the language has the capability of providing higher meaning by adding the emotions and importance and how the mind will consume in terms of importance. It is meditative in nature. English as a language to compare with. English is position dependent, whereas Sanskrit is inflection dependent. Inflection means when you have a word and you change the word for defining the position. So no matter where that word is, that positional aspect of the word will determine. As you know, Rama, Ramo, Ramaha, Ramam, Ramo, Raman, Sahato, Tetam, Tetani, Tenetabhyam, Taihi. Right? When you go into that vibhakti and that too in singular, plural, and dual, right, you will see that the word, when it is positioned, it has an absolute meaning that it can deliver. That is what we call it as inflection dependent. Inflection is applied in English, but not as a basis for communicate. For example, he puts versus they put. In Sanskrit, it is at its core modifications of the word deriving the meaning, starting from the vibhakti, which is the sahatau tetam tetani, right? So that is the way that the Sanskrit language is. And that power, Vedavyasa and Bhagavan has used it in this shloka very beautifully. So when in Gita you see these jumbled words, it is not randomness or a poetic necessity. It is something usually much, much more intelligent. And when you start applying that sense of language to this shlokas, all the shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, the extent of revelation these shlokas can bring just exponentially grows. To make it clear, objective is to make the listener, as an Arjuna or us, to first register the phenomenon, not a cause or qualifier. Then comes the qualifier, right? So this is like teaching. Instead of saying because of X, Y happened, the teacher saying that, hey, observe Y. You see what has happened to Y. Now let me show you why this has happened and explains the X. This approach is very essential for some of the higher concepts of revelations. And there are places where such putting it in the other way around will reduce the value of what is being conveyed. So based on what is being conveyed, we can determine that. In this instance, we say that the structure pulls the student into an observation. Arjuna, in this situation, is a surrendered student to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan has to pull that maturity out of him, which he is already matured. He is a great man. We have seen it so many things prior to the war, where his greatness is emphasized. But herein, he is down in his mind, and he has to be pulled up. And for doing that, narrating it in such a way that is, observe why. And let me explain you how this happened. This is the relationship between what happened, which is X, to Y, the change that you are seeing. And this approach is very essential for this concept, is the way that we conclude. So as I said, this is more of my personal learning experience, and I just wanted to share it with you so that when you happen to look at Bhagavad Gita, the first thing is we look at the shloka and we look at the meaning. You go into any book, you will see it. But after that, you may want to jump into the Sanskrit aspect of it. Why? Why is it that it is conveyed like this? And when you start analyzing, the extent to which the same Bhagavad Gita can reveal is limitless. Niraharasya dehinaha viṣayāḥ vinivartante. Yes, this is grammatically accurate, perhaps even elegant. In the teaching tradition, though, it is considered psychologically weaker. This example is descriptive rather than the process of revealing. The process of revealing is essential for a good teaching of this particular concept than a description of what it is. So when I reveal the description, you understand what it is. But when I put it the other way around, it becomes a revelation to you. It makes your mind to blossom. Gita and other Shastras have stood the passage of time because this is called Vakya Shilpa. Because of this Vakya Shilpa. Shilpa is craftsmanship. Vakya Shilpa is sentence craftsmanship. And because of this, these shlokas have attained an immortality. For example, even people who have not studied Bhagavad Gita, they would know some of the shlokas very easily. It gets by, it can become, you can by heart them. But there are various shlokas which I still have to go through the book to remember it. That is the greatness the Vakya Shilpa brings to us. Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame. I was teaching Vishnu Sahasranama to the children, and they have picked it up like anything. That is so catchy, right? Not all of the shlokas in Vishnu Sahasranama are that catchy for easy learning. Whereas these are all things which are absolute beauty. What mental movement is this arrangement of creating makes? Shastra is guiding awareness, not merely conveying a data. That is the key thing to learn. In Bhagavad Gītā, it is guiding an awareness in you. It is not giving you a new information. That is not what the objective of Bhagavad Gītā is. The Bhagavad Gīta's objective is to bring about that change in you and make you glow. In terms of benefits of Sanskrit, because the meaning is carried through case endings. Viṣayāḥ, it is a nominative plural. Dehinah, it is genitive. Right. So you can look it up to say what is nominative versus genitive. It is used in all the languages. Ownership association versus how the one is the relationship, another is kind of towards the action. Relationships are clear regardless of the position, and hence you can change it around. This gives the composer the artistic and pedagogical freedom which is not available in other rigid languages. And this is considered as a mark of linguistic maturity that comes with the name Sanskrit itself. Sanskrit means that which has been done well. And Sanskrit is a language which speaks to it. The other language which I really admire is Tamil. It is also so beautiful. You can arrange your things in such a marvelous way. And we say that, it is not even in a tale, but it is just in tradition that is spoken, that the oldest language, there is always a discussion between whether it is Sanskrit or Tamil. But the way that we tell it is both of them originated from Shiva's Damru. It has two sides. So when he is playing the Damru and performing his the cosmic dance, the sound from one side generated Tamil and sound from the other generated Sanskrit. Now, which sound came first, which side came first is almost meaningless, but if somebody says Tamil came first, awesome, thank you. If somebody says Sanskrit came first, awesome, thank you. I will just pay my respects to my guru because I was fortunate enough to have learned both the languages. But it is just a small digression that I had in the class today. You should excuse me for that. What happens in Bhashyam? How does Shankaracharya puts it? So he says, even if a person stops consuming or engaging with sense object, yadyapi vishaya upalakshithani vishaya shabda vachyani indriyani is the way that he goes. Through austerity, fasting, or forceful suppression, like a foolish ascetic might do, the senses, that is the indriyani, may seem to have withdrawn, like the limbs of a tortoise. But what remains is the emotional attachment or subtle longing. This is the rasa or the raga. This rasa, the essence of emotional craving to the taste or attraction, does not go away just because the objects are absent. True withdrawal happens only when even rasa is gone. And that happens only through self-realization, as Bhagavan Krishna will say next. One may stop engaging with sense objects, like in fasting. But the subtle desire or emotional craving, the rasa, raga, may still remain. So mere suppression of the senses is not true renunciation. Real detachment comes only when the inner rasa is dissolved by the higher knowledge. That is the way that Shankaracharya has put it, which forms the seed for all the explanations done earlier, except for the grammar side of it, which I kind of deviated into the language. Further, Shankaracharya says, even the subtle attachment rasa, the lingering emotional coloring of sense object, which is very hard to detect. Shankaracharya uses sukshmaha is the word that he puts it. It's very subtle in nature and deeply ingrained, is destroyed when one realizes the supreme truth. The paramartha tattvam is the word that he has used. Then the seeker sees Brahman directly and abides in the firm realization, I am that. Aham eva tad ithi varthamanasya. Start living, starts his journey of life with that sense, which is aham eva tad iti vartamanasya is the word that Shankaracharya has used. Then the last seed of attachment to objects, the subtle rasaha, withdraws completely, nivartate. At that point, object-based thinking or attraction becomes seedless, nirbhijam. Hence, it cannot re-arise in the mind. That is the extent to which he puts the emphasis. He says that in this process, when you elevate yourself for seeing the Supreme, and the natural way of dropping the interest in the objects of interest to the sense organs, the objects of interest becomes nirbhijam. The ragaha becomes nirbhijam, without any seed. So it cannot sprout ever after, is what Shankaracharya emphasizes as a part of the bhashyam for this shloka. Further, he says, without true vision, samyag darshanam, that is a clear realization of the self or Brahman, there is no real destruction of the rasaha, which is the subtle emotional longing or attachment towards the worldly objects. Therefore, one must establish and stabilize the intellect in that right seeing, that samyak darshanam, which alone can remove all the inner cravings from the root. And this is not like something that is not seen and you are seeing suddenly. It is something that you have been seeing at all times without the realization of seeing it, because the way that you are seeing is extremely outwards. And we will talk about it in our next shloka, where we will take the quotes from Kathopanishad, etc. One who wishes to attain the stable wisdom rooted in the right knowledge must first bring the senses under one's control, because Bhagavan is about to point out the fault, the dosham that arises from not restraining the senses. And he introduces the 60th shloka here, which speaks to even those who have studied all these things, they have become very knowledgeable, even they slip, is what Bhagavan will say in the next shloka. Moving on to 60th shloka. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham manaha. Going word by word. Yatataha api, putting an effort towards, is yatataha. Hyapi is he api. He gives a assurance with the he, and api is in spite of, even though. Kaunteya, O Arjuna, son of Kunti, purushasya vipaschitaha. Purushasya, here it directly refers to a person. Vipaschitaha. Vipaschitaha is who have this matured vision. Paschitaha is seeing. Vipaschitaha, vi as a prefix called as upasarga in Sanskrit. Vi as an upasarga will attach the meaning of viseshena, of special seeing. So whose mind has a sense of discriminating, see it as this, that, mine, his, etc., is also considered to be vipaschitaha. Or seeing beyond that is also considered to be vipaschitaha. So in our sense, it is seeing it as this, means seeing it in a divided way. In terms of a jnani, the division should have completely gone. However, his vision will also see the division, is what the emphasis that Bhagavan brings here. Indriyani, the sense organs. Pramathini. Pramathini is agitating. We will look at this word during the analysis. Haranti prasabham. Haranti is harna, snatching away, forcibly taking away. And prasabham, by force, manaha, the mind. So Bhagavan has said this here. Nature of manaha is to wander. The defect is developing the attachment. The agitating senses will defeat the manaha and hold it towards the object of interest. This is the place where manaha, which is the the king of all the indriyas, or the most supreme, the powerful of all the indriyas, even manaha gets defeated to the objects that pull, which is done by the indriyas. So that is what we need to understand. The indriyas will continue to pull. That key core message that Bhagavan brings in this shloka. So in 259, Bhagavan removed the illusion that withdrawal is enough. In 260, he removes the illusion that clarity alone is not enough as well. Clarity alone is definitely not enough. What the shloka says is, oh Kaunteya, even for a striving person, even for one endowed with discrimination, that is, who has got the vairagya, the turbulent senses can forcibly carry away the mind. Senses can overpower even the most wise men on earth. And the best example is when Shankaracharya, he took a bath and came out of Ganges. He saw a Chandala walking in the front. And all his disciples, they said, move away, Shankaracharya is coming. And the Chandala didn't do anything. Shankaracharya also said, move away. Then Chandala asked a question to Shankaracharya. He says, others saying is okay, I understand. They don't know. But you are also saying this is shocking. So you tell me, you clarify it to me, whether the body which is made of the food, the same as yours is mine, are you asking this body to move away from that body? Or Atma, which is Ekam, are you asking this Atma to move away from that Atma which defeats the single or the Ekam as the concept? And Shankaracharya falls in his feet. We need to understand that even for people who have that supreme ability, this way of the vision distracting them from their core is natural. One who sees is yatataha. This is the disciplined person. And vipaschitaha, to see distinctly, not ignorant, not confused, has a good scriptural understanding. He has got the intellectual clarity, even for him. Pramathini. This is a very beautiful word. It has the root of mat. We have used samudra mathan, right? Where it is violent, agitating, or plundering, or destabilizing. The senses don't politely request attention. Hey, can I look at it? They will force the manaha to follow it. It is that powerful. So this leads us to understand the nature of indriyas. Swatantra pravritti is the word that we use. Similar to mind, even the indriyas have its own independence. Indriyas too have independent functioning. They need the man as the base, but are independent of the manaha. Similar to how the man needs the chaitanyam to support it for its existence, but manaha is swatantraha. So it is important to keep in mind that they are not your enemies. These, indriyas are not against you. They are designed for survival engagement, and the survival is the first and the basic instinct of a jivan. They move outward by design, and hence you do not want to consider the indriyas are the ones which are at fault. In Kathopanishad, very beautifully Yamadharma Raja puts it, Atmanam rathinam vidhi shariram rathamevatu buddhim tu sarathim vidhi manaha pragrahamevacha indriyani hayan ahuhu vishayan steshu gocharan. This is the way that the entire body and how the world is, from a Jivan point of view, is described by Yamadharmaraja. What he says, Atmanam Rathinam Vidhi. This Jivatma, see it as a Rath, a chariot. The body is the chariot, and the intellect is the charioteer, the one who is driving the chariot. Chariot doesn't go by itself. The mind the mind is the reins, that which ties the horses to the rath. And the sense are the horses. Sense objects are the road or the path towards which it goes. And the key message that ties to this shloka is a chariot is only as stable as its horses. So that is the way Kathopanishad puts it. And then it continues, Yastva vijnanavan bhavati yuktena manasa sada tasyendriyana vashyani dushtashva iva sarathe. So here the advice comes for one lacking discrimination, whose mind is unrestrained. The senses become like a wild horse. The word pramathini aligns with this statement from the Upanishad. Pramathini he is using it from the Samudra Mathan, the agitation that is done. And here in Yamadharmaraja's words, he says it is the vash that is required. It is equated to the wild horses, which is not in control, which means your rath cannot go towards its objective. The teaching comes from Kathopanishad 2.1.1. The most very beautiful mantra in this Upanishad is Paranchikani Vetrunat Swayambhuhu. This I would have quoted in other classes as well. Tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman. So he says, why is it that you are not seeing your antaratma? It is because these sense organs are always taking you outwards. So there are places where they say that Bhagavan has punished us by creating these indriyas looking outwards, which is in itself preventing us from looking inwards. Basically, Bhagavan in this shloka is saying that the outward pull is not a moral flaw. It is structural and natural. The need, therefore, is intelligent reorientation, not a change. It is reorientation, and this reorientation can happen when you look at the higher value that we saw in the previous shloka. Raga Dvesha is built into the perception. Ears chase the sound, tongue chases the taste, eyes chase form. Put something in the notice board and declare that students don't read this, and everyone will go and read it. It is a very natural thing that happens for these. Indriyas, chasing indriya artha is not bondage. Bondage begins when the mind gets abducted by the indriyas. Indriyas are doing their duty of seeing outside because they are supporting the survival, which is your demand from them, which is their role. They are performing their duty. The attachment that you develop, which generates through the ahankara and manaha, is the one which is driving you. In fact, from all the antakarna, chittam, manam, buddhi, ahankara, that is the place where you lose the control to the indriyas. So that is what Bhagavan is trying to bring in this shloka. Haranti prasabham. Haranti, they are carried away. It is abducted. Prasabham, by force. You don't decide, let me get distracted. It just distracts you. Buddhi decides, manaha comes before that. The mind is gone even before the decision is formed in you. We think that we act with awareness. The fact of the matter is, there are places where you act with awareness. You decide, that is the buddhi. You train your mind and your abilities, the skill that you promote in yourself, and you also have the pranan, which is the energy that is required to perform that action. But even before this decision is made, the haranti happens. The objects are snatching away you from your position. And this is an important warning that we have to bear in mind. The impact of losing mind, we will talk about it later too. Here it is attention, discrimination, contemplative capacity. All of these are lost. Bhagavan will speak in 2 shlokas what is the effect of this impact. From a Vedantic perspective, when the mind is hijacked, nididhyasanam becomes impossible. Indirectly, Bhagavan is hinting nididhyasanam requires a mind that abides, which makes dhyanam as an important element that contributes to that. Dhyanam is the typical meditation. Spiritual maturity includes understanding the terrain. Even a seasoned sailor respects the ocean. Unless you understand the terrain, you are going to experience something that you did not expect, which will make you lose in the effort that you are putting towards. Kaunteya. This is a place where I was thinking of it and I said, okay, this is a good place where we can introduce why these kind of, in between, in every shloka, in many shlokas, you will see that, Bhagavan says Kaunteya, right, Mahabaho, right, and Anasuya. All these things are the kind of words that we have seen Bhagavan referring to Arjuna. Similarly, Arjuna also uses a specific name. What is it that is so important as a value in the name? One can just say, okay, he has just given a name. Maybe it is just used as a placeholder for forming the poetry, but that is not the way that we see it. As I said, every word is worth analyzing. And let us look at the word Kaunteya here, and we will give some examples of how emotions are bound to the name with which Bhagavan is referring Arjuna. The tone for this particular shloka is to be assertive. It is to, not let a person become demoralized with their own experiences. The effect that Bhagavan wants to bring here is the motherly affection to be expressed, encouraging, supportive, emotionally understanding the other person. That was the kind of emotion that was required. And hence Bhagavan addresses Arjuna with the name Kaunteya, son of Kunti. Right? Now, if you look back at Kunti's, we can look at the struggle that she has gone through right from the childhood and how she has risen and she has stood by it. When you look at that, and when you look at myself from that point of view, the attachment, the affection that the Guru has expressed will have a deep impact in Arjuna towards understanding what is being conveyed here. And hence Bhagavan has used Kaunteya. If you go to analyze it further, if it is challenging in nature, he will use Kshatriyatvam in the name, Mahabaho, Arjuna. If he has to give some reassurance, he would use that which is going to soften up the nature, the mind of the listener. So that is the place where Kaunteya is coming. If he wants to give an elevation, then he will universalize the teaching. He would use names that refer to Bharata, that is the lineage in which he comes. Right? So it attaches to that kind of a name that is being used. And if in case he wants grounding, because he is going to convey some divine secrets and he wants the person to be rooted, he would use the names that establishes the worthiness of the person. The names that are being used, which typically we say is Arjuna, has a deep connotation to what is being conveyed in that shloka. We don't refer to this prior to the shloka number 11, when the Upadesha starts. And after shloka number 66, when there is an Upadesha, we associate this value in interpreting each and every shloka. In Bhashyam, Acharya says, even a person of wisdom, a person who sees clearly, vipaschit, who is sincerely striving, yatataha, on the spiritual path, if he is not vigilant, he may be overpowered by the senses. Because the senses are inherently restless, pramathini, and draw the mind towards the sense object. These agitated senses, even without one's permission, carry away the mind. Even when the person is watching, this happens. Even when I'm fully aware, fully conscious, this happens. This is the strength of habit and craving, which arises if the senses are not reined from the beginning. He's so clear. If you can now attach all that we discussed in the analysis, you can see how beautiful a seed Shankaracharya has placed here. Even wise seekers who are trying sincerely can get carried away by the senses. The senses are forceful by nature, and when they are directed outward, they disturb the person. There is an agitation that forms inside you. They can pull the mind away. Even when the person is aware and watching, this will happen. Hence, discipline and vigilance are essential for a stable wisdom. Viveka Vijnana Yuktam Manah. Very essential to understand that all of these are elements. I just casually say I. But the fact is, the functional I that I think I am is made of so many components, and each of which are independent on its own, is that which we always tend to overlook. And this is a place where, through a motherly affection, Bhagavan has expressed this in Bhagavad Gita, bringing it to our knowledge. Here, the Shloka number 61 begins, which is more towards an advice. Tani sarvani sayyamya yukta asita mat paraha. Right? Vashehi yasyendriyani tasya prajña pratishtita is the way that Bhagavan will go into the Shloka number 61, which we will take it up in our next class.
Param drashti, to do away with my lesser sins.
Here again, we emphasize the value of a guru. Guru is not a person who has got a beard and this thing. A person who can help you in this particular process is the way that we look at it, right? And that guru can guide you when you are slipping, when you are doing this effort, but you still slip. And if in case there are areas where, hey, why is this happening? How can I overcome it? You don't need the answers. But when you are able to express it to somebody, they don't even have to give you a solution or even respond to it. But when you are able to express yourself, you will gain a control. And a person to whom you express is called as guru. And typically the reason is because we put a value in our mind towards that person. Yes, try to put yourself into that, be expressive, and you will see that very quickly you can get to that param dṛṣṭvā.
I can relate to, in immediate sense, all those addictive behaviors that we have. To get away with that,
Correct.
I have to see something bigger, larger.
No, see, what is preventing you from seeing something larger is because you have not expressed that which is a weakness that you see in yourself. You are trying to hide it. For example, I am a bad person. I drink a lot and stuff like that. Right?
Precisely,
I'm not expressing it. Right? I'm not expressing it. Then I will not be able to overcome. If in case I'm going to keep it in the hiding, I'm not going to overcome that. The first step is to be able to express it. And if in case you're going to express it to someone who is going to say, okay, come, let us also go and drink, then it is not going to solve my problem. So it is good if in case I can express it to a guru. And the idea is not for him to stop it, right? That is a story that we gave as an example, right? Where Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, hey, if in case you drink, enjoy, go drink, do whatever you like. But first offer it to me and then start doing it. And that changed him. It is not Ramakrishna Paramahamsa who changed it. He himself changed it. But why? Because he expressed. So that is what I meant by expressing. Make sense?
Yes, very much. On the dot.
Shrikant Bhaiya?
Actually, Guruji, Ramani and I are sitting side by side. I'll let her go first and I'll come back with my question.
Sure. Ramani Bhavi?
Hello, Nashji. Namaste. No, I do not have any questions. Sorry.
No,
Give
absolutely.
it to Shrikant.
Okay.
Okay.
Bhavi.
So, Guruji, I think this was a very nice session, and I love the way you've taken time to talk about the chandas, the correlation to the English language, and even as you were saying that, and forgive me, but I was thinking about Yoda, Master Yoda from Star Wars, just to give a correlation, right? The way Master Yoda speaks is kind of convoluted, if you would, right? And I was thinking about and reflecting the way the Lord is asking us to observe first, and then from that decipher, the essence of what was just observed, right? So I really loved that, right? And the other thing I was thinking about is even, and this is more of a question I'm asking myself, if even the most wisest, the person who's seeing the indriyas, taking away consciousness and leaning into God, how can we as mere mortals really attain that, right? I mean, even the big guys are struggling, and that's the essence of how this happens. That how can we, me, who's a nobody, even yearn or think about achieving that greatness, right? That's a question I have. And the second part of my question is, in our situation where we are right now, we are grieving Shreya's loss, and I take Ramni's position and myself as a dad as well, knowing that your heart yearns for that person. We're missing that person, and our senses are going towards, I don't want to say Shreya as an object, but that person. How do you overcome that? How do you overcome that and still say, what, the manas, right? So you have to ask your manas to say, I know you want to think about that person, but going back to your comment about, you have to realize that your indriyas are taking you away, and come back to that consciousness, and yeah, and somehow not think about the person, right? I don't know. I don't know if I'm able to communicate myself, but that's what I was feeling. Yeah.
I think I understand what you're trying to communicate, and I'm going to answer it. The first one is, in our understanding, the reason why that jumbled expression was there is because the same mistake that everybody does, which is, instead of putting the effort to see the Supreme, we put the effort to win the Indriyas. The seeing the Supreme is not our objective. We are not putting our effort towards seeing the Supreme. Instead, we are trying to use that Supreme to win over the influences of the Indriya. That shift has to take place, wherein, whenever the Indriyas have won or blocked me from seeing the Supreme, I take it as, okay, one of the hurdle has come. That is why I was referring to that 5 Shloka. It is called as Manisha Panchakam by Shankaracharya. And even for Shankaracharya, when he was at his highest position, right, even for him, that slip happened. That slip is very natural. And that slip is not that you are failed. That is why Bhagavan was using Kaunteya as well, that motherly affection. That slip is very, very natural. They are doing their duty. That has overpowered my vipaschita, maturity of seeing things. And then I'll come back to seeing the maturity. And we should accept it, because they are also equally important. But being in the realization quickly is what our objective should be. By definition, a jnani is one who has established himself in that. The second part of the question is the thing that you have experienced, right? I don't think any of us will be able to be as strong and steady as you are. It is not going to go away easily. The pain is going to be there. First and foremost thing is, accept that and transform your mind to thinking that pain not as a pain, but as the love. First and foremost thing. You start experiencing the love for Shreya in your mind with your memory. That memory is not going to burn you. That memory is not going to hurt you. She is gone and she is being taken by God. It is important to take it that way. And if Bhagavan has done this, he definitely has a reason why he has taken her back. We can be rest assured, because as we learn more and more about God, that becomes very clear that it is being done with a specific purpose in mind. It is just that it is not cognizable by me. It is not something that I can understand. It is beyond my level of understanding. It is beyond a human ability to understand. Once you realize that, slowly transforming dukkham and the suffering into love and memory will be a beautiful prasad as we look at it towards the future. So don't take it as something, how can I overcome that? Don't try to overcome that. Herein again, that paraṁ dṛṣṭvā, when you start looking at the higher value, right? I'm sure there are, when you are going to be another 20 years down the line, the kind of thought about Shreya that will bring into you will still be having that iota of pain. But because you have developed this pain and you have converted into the love for Shreya, it will leave a much sweeter taste in your memory. And the way that we look at it from a mrityu point of view is Swarup of Shreya, in whatever form that she is, will be delighted by that transformation. And you can set an example to the world of showing how we can convert the highest of the pain into the most beautiful aspect of love, of being. Kritagnyata is the word that I would use, that greatness of the thankfulness for the 20 plus years that she has given to us, bringing so much of joy in our life, right? That kritagnyata will naturally follow, and the expression of love will supersede the sense of pain that is going to last forever in your life. And remember, we will be there with you to support at all times. Hari Bhaiya, I know what he is, so I'm sure he is going to be close and supporting at all times.
Yeah, thank you so much, Guruji. It's really helping us kind of navigate our tough times, but we hope we are able to follow in your guidance. So we appreciate all the support.
Absolutely.
And Hari has been right here with us, and he always checks on us all the time, and we are so thankful. We believe in destiny, so I'm sure there is a reason why I have Hari in my life, and vice versa. Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from all of us, Hari Bhaiya, thank you so very much for the wonderful support that you are offering.
Thank you, Guruji.
Well, we will take leave today and get back next week. Harihi Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat.